Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to ask a question of Mr. Fettis. You addressed political things. You didn't actually discuss any of the technical issues. Mr. Halstead posited that the defect in Yucca was that even though we could talk about what you could engineer to hold nuclear waste, the geological setting was not adequate. Does NRDC have an opinion on whether the geology at Yucca or in general is vital?
We do. We think it's fraught with a series of significant technical questions. We think it's much more leaky than was originally thought in the 1980s when it was chosen for, as Mr. Halstead said, political reasons. We also think there are significant questions whether it could ever survive the licensing process in any meaneful fashion.
Do you have an opinion? Does NRDC have an opinion about places in the United States where, from a geological perspective, it would be appropriate to permanently dispose of nuclear waste?
You know, yes, in that we think that the process that Mr. Barrett just referenced, the U.S. Geological Survey process from the mid-1980s that did look at 36 states, it came up with, and Mr. Barrett can correct me if I'm wrong, dozens of locations that could potentially be suitable. My point and why I spent the time on the institutional process, and I don't really see it as politics, I see it as the institutional framework for how to go forward, is you won't get to that scientific review, a meaningful, deep review of what is a suitable site until you reapportion the power consistent with our environmental laws.
I just, to me, it's, that is obviously wrong. That is obviously wrong. I don't know if you can cite me any state that wants to begin this.
Actually,
who is asking for this?
This is why
Which state?
It won't work. Okay, at the end of the Obama administration, and I really appreciate the question. At the end of the Obama administration, they wanted to look at the viability of deep borehole disposal in South Dakota. South Dakota, red state South Dakota, they drew up the barriers so fast, so hard, and I would encourage you to go talk to DOE about what happened. It did not go well. The reason why it did not go well was because any time the Energy Department starts to look for it, a state thinks it could be entirely on the hook for everything. And until you change that, until consistent with environmental law, states have the ability to set the terms by which they could accept some portion, we will not get forward progress. You will have what happened with Nevada. We even have right now.
But what you're saying is we know Nevada doesn't want it. South Dakota didn't want it either.
They didn't want it
Tennessee
all.
didn't want it.
We don't know what will happen, honestly, if you actually reset the process where people are not on the hook for everything. And that's the key point.
So what would be the terms by which you'd approach, with which you'd approach South Dakota and say, we're not going to give you everything, we're going to give you half of it?
They wouldn't be approached like that because basically you would have an entire reset where we have right now a licensed consolidated interim storage facility in this country. You know that, right? In Utah. It exists. It's built and it's licensed. It will never accept a gram of waste because Senator Orrin Hatch led the entire congressional delegation to put a wilderness area around it in a circle to ensure waste will never be shipped there.
So I just suggest what I'm inferring is that there's not a lot of enthusiasm among the states to accept any amount of undefined or defined amount of nuclear waste. There just isn't. I have experience in local politics. No one even wants a house next to their house. I mean, it is, to me, it is, when you talk about federalism, the magic of federalism is the supremacy clause. And the ability of the federal government to say, you know what, I have to look at all you squabblers, and I have to say from a technical perspective that this is a safer place to put this waste in this geology, per this engineering, through this licensing process, than say next to 8 million people on the coast on a military base. That's a better, that this risk is lower. And I think from a practical standpoint, I don't know where you get the idea that some state is going to come, give you a high five for putting nuclear waste in. There's just not going to happen. And it's up to this committee and the federal government to say, from a technical perspective, from a safety perspective, it's not going to be in these dangerous places. It's going to be in a safer place. That's why I support all three of these bills, and I think we have to move forward. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.